The secret was that the land was never what Okan remembered. After 80 years fighting in a world of demons, he finally returns, but the vision of home transforms into a nightmare. He hoped for tranquility, but the red glow in the window tells another story. A warning echoes, and grotesque monsters approach. Upon encountering the brave boy, Okan realizes that courage is a rare gift, even in desperate times. Now, what was once a chance for peace turns into a race for survival, where his story is far from having a happy ending. The fight for life has only just begun, and challenges await our boy. And hello, I am Shin. Welcome to the best channel of Manhwa. Get right in there by hitting the like button and sharing this video. Without further ado, let's get to the video. What everyone didn't know was that Kan, the protagonist, was no ordinary guy. He had spent 80 years fighting in a world where he was the true spearhead, and, best of all, he had even killed the demon king of that world. After the mission seemed over and utterly exhausted, Kan asked a goddess, "Send me back to the land, but keep my memories and experiences." The goddess agreed, but in the land, his version had already died. So, the man's soul was placed in a brand new body, but on the verge of death. Unlucky for him, right? And then, well, a ray of light illuminated everything, and the new body he received was just that of a teenager. Even so, the goddess still believed he had a chance to live something new. When he opened his eyes again, Kan was back on Earth. And it doesn't seem like it, but that other world had been hell, you know? Now, in the new body, he looked around and found clean, pure water flowing from the faucet just by pressing a button, and fire was lit too. Wow, my brother, this is pure magic, he was thinking. And of course, he could still indulge in his favorite food, fried chicken schnitzel. That perfect texture brought tears to his eyes. He remembered that in 80 years of fighting, he had never tasted a worthy meal. Now it seemed he could have a normal life. Then he relaxed. As he was settling in, he noticed a tender red glow at the window. Determined to clean himself up, the dog went to the bathroom and took a relaxing shower. Although he felt like a fish out of water in this new world, he believed his life could be better. Until out of nowhere, a grotesque face appeared at the window. The creature almost made the guy have a heart attack. How could something so bizarre exist in broad daylight? Suddenly, an emergency alert echoed through the apartment. "Evacuate quickly! There is a corrosion rift! Everyone to the shelter!" The idea of what was going on left him dumbfounded. Soon, he turned to see several humanoid monsters sticking to his window, confident, with sharp claws, ready to break in, and it was time to run. The dog couldn't believe his eyes. As the monsters tried to invade, he bolted. Fury and desperation engulfed the scene. The earth was no longer the same. He remembered that he urgently needed to understand what was happening. Those beings that looked like monsters were a serious threat. So, without hesitation, he dodged, heading away from it all. Far away, he came across the edge of the window and soon jumped out. He decided that the shelter was the best way to go. It was at that moment that he spotted a child in front of him. In that impulse, he thought he could take the kid along, but the boy seemed more interested in heading straight into the midst of the monsters. The child's gaze was firm despite his young age, and he even suggested that the dog join him to take down those monsters. The dog went wild thinking about that kid's bravery. In all that talk, he discovered that the earth had been in that insane mess for 13 years. The corrosion rifts were the portals through which the monsters emerged. No one had the slightest idea how they came to be. The floating of Okan was palpable, you know. After all the hell he'd been through, there was no way he was going back to that place that had turned into a nightmare, right? So, to make things worse, he asked who the strongest hunter in the world was, kid. Without a second thought, he let this guy from Gremio Ganabi loose, one of the most powerful. He was wielding a giant sword, dealing with a corruption fisher over in Swing Okan. Even knowing there were some badass hunters out there, he found it strange that humans were fighting monsters. And then, in a snap, he covered the child's mouth, asking for silence. The monsters were coming and his heart raced. Calmly observing, Okan saw 5 monsters in front of him, and in fact, there was one more, hidden. Although this new body he had seemed to possess above-average strength, he wasn't sure if he could protect a child in combat. He couldn't leave her behind, but he also didn't know how to face 5 creatures like that. And suddenly, a sensation like mine took over him. The air had a bluish energy, mana. He recognized the essence identical to that from his previous world. Then, out of nowhere, one of the monsters went down, exploding in flames. The attack was launched by none other than Lucan, of course. The mana he had accumulated over 80 years had evaporated, but as long as there was mana in the air, the guy could still harness that power. This meant he could use the paradoxical flame he had inscribed on his weapon. The strength wasn't as fierce as before, but it was enough to deal with those monsters. And what happened? The kid who was looking at him, completely paralyzed. I never thought you had such a unique ability, and he was already gearing up to charge at the monsters. Okan was left speechless, wondering what that boy meant. Okan questioned why he should hurry. As Okan already suspected, the child became the immediate target of the monsters. Terror filled the boy's face, but fortunately, Okan was quick and grabbed him by the arm, pointing to that staff that was already on the ground. Damn, my brother. The guy needed the boy's weapon, that was for sure. The next moment, 3 monsters charged at Okan. When the staff finally reached his hands, his gaze transformed completely. He became a true predator. A sharp whistle sliced through the air as he swung the staff, and whoa! The 3 monsters were cut down in one go, cleanly, with a precise cut at the waist. At that moment, Okan felt a sinister nostalgia, as if he were back in the good old days of God of the Spear. The boy, well, he was speechless, astonished. To him, Okan wasn't just any guy. He was a hunter hiding his powerful identity. But inside, Okan was boiling with rage. The peaceful life he so desperately wanted was being destroyed like that. Soon after, with an irritated expression, he pulled the boy towards the underground refuge. The boy's mother recognized him right away and was endlessly thanking Okan, saying he was the one who had saved her son. When Okan saw the elegant, high-quality clothes the woman was wearing, he was somewhat paralyzed, you know? The family was wealthy, which made sense for the boy to act so arrogantly. But then, at that moment, the building started shaking out of nowhere. A monster burst through the entrance and invaded the place. Everyone began to flee in panic, but Okan just stood there, as if chaos didn't bother him. The boy turned around and shouted for him to run, claiming that not even Okan would stand a chance against that monster. But the guy, my brother, didn't move. He had spent all this time thinking he was back in a safe place, but now he saw that this place was no different from his previous world. Okan turned to the boy and asked why his family was so rich. He still wanted to become a hunter instead of hiding in some comfortable place. The boy replied that his father had been murdered. His family had also been in a shelter, but still, the boy's father was slaughtered by the monsters. That explanation was impactful. Since then, the boy decided there was no safe place on Earth, so he swore to become the fiercest hunter possible, with the mission of eliminating all cracks of corruption and saving the world. A bit ridiculous, right? No. But before he could finish, Okan interrupted. Then, with a little smile that conveyed a kind of calm and reassurance, he said that one day the boy would become a great hunter. But fortunately, he would never be able to save this world. As soon as Okan said this, the boy's mother pulled him desperately, pleading for him to run. At that same moment, a deafening explosion occurred behind them. The boy turned around and stood in shock as he saw the monster everyone feared had already been annihilated by the dog with a single blow. The reason the dog said the boy would never be able to save the world was simple, because that mission was his, and he had the cunning needed for it. After finishing off the monster, the dog went home to gather the basic information about the new world. Our boy also discovered with a pang in his heart that his account was nearly empty, only 3,000 yen. The former owner of that body was employed at a logistics company, but it went bankrupt due to corruption, you know? And the poor guy became unemployed just when he was asked how he was going to pay the bills. There he saw an advertisement on his phone, hunter recruitment. Time flew until the next day. At the hunter's headquarters, the selection ceremony was about to take place, attracting recruiters from guilds, all on the lookout for new talent. The guys were already suspicious, thinking that this batch of hunters was full of nobodies, you know? But in reality, one of the 10 most powerful hunters in the world, Lee So-um, was keeping an eye on this event. Everyone looked at her in admiration, the kind of person who normally only appeared in the news. But there she was, flesh and blood. Everyone thought he would be one, having come because of Azinga, a straight-A graduate from the Hunter Academy. The girl had electro-control abilities. What no one knew was that this one didn't take Azinga seriously at all. To her, it was just a walking battery box. A partner next to her commented that the girl's abilities could still be useful, you know? But then a nearby man, wearing sunglasses, calmly said that many prodigies from the academy would choke in real combat. LC seemed to appreciate this response and tossed a candy to his colleague as if it were a compliment. After all, training and real fighting were 2 totally different worlds, and that was it until the combat in the arena was about to start. LC observed closely, hoping to find some distinguished talent. Show them the strength that matters, she thought. The host was surprised when revealing the profile of a contestant. It was a civilian, someone who hadn't even attended the Hunter's Academy. Meanwhile, the dog was zipping up his suit, firmly holding the weapon the association had provided him. At that moment, the host continued to tease the guy, questioning how much courage it took to get there without liking the video. Come on, man, you must be kidding, right? Let's go, let's go, let's go. Then continuing, how could this guy have the necessary courage to step on that stage? And now, here it goes, the contestant announced. Honestly, Khan was still not completely used to this new name. The rules were simple. Only weapons provided by the association were allowed, and causing fatal damage was prohibited. What Khan really aimed for was to use that exam as a springboard to gain more authority. In front of him, a young blonde faced Khan arrogantly, underestimating the guy, expecting an opponent who could barely gather mana. But Okan's expression didn't change at all. To him, the opponent was just a collection of openings. Then, Khan drove his weapon into the ground, and to the blonde's astonishment, he simply vanished from his sight. The young man's mind became confused. He was a hunter focused on speed, and to his surprise, when he realized it, Khan was already behind him. "Look at your technique, it's lightning!" Khan started to speak, mocking the guy. "You don't even need a weapon to put you on the ground." In the blink of an eye, Khan landed a punch to the blonde's abdomen, nearly making the boy vomit his dinner from the night before. When the guy was about to collapse, Okan did the unthinkable and stepped on him, forcing him to stand. Then came the brutal uppercut, shattering the audacious one's jaw. The young blonde, who just moments ago was so full of himself, could barely think now. Okan hadn't expected the guy to be so fragile. He knew he wasn't a match, but wow, the dude broke way too easily. Okan's choice to fight unarmed was strategic. A spear could have caused serious injuries. Relaxing, Khan realized that the little boy was likely a rookie in this game. By the way, he did not represent in any way the level of a true hunter. And, by the way, the girl was completely paralyzed. What the hell is this guy? She became intrigued, opening Okan's profile. He was an employee of a logistics company. Huh, is that really it? A colleague then said that the boy hardly had any mana left for such a power. Years of training would be necessary. In other words, the only plausible explanation was that it was pure luck. This argument turned out to be nothing more than a cold "shut up." The girl said it seemed much more viable that Okan was simply avoiding accumulating mana in that battlefield. Okan turned his neck, already feeling a bit trapped within his own chain. But if he really wanted to show his strength, the fight needed to end decisively. In the next second, he was standing next to the young blonde, already raising his fist. He calmly said, "Relax, this blow won't kill you." The blonde, in a panic, kept begging for mercy. "My brother." Then, with a quick and decisive blow, Okan knocked the guy unconscious. The scene shocked the audience, and a heated debate began among the recruiters and hunters in the stands, while some struggled over Okan's true strength. Lise had already made a decision. She would test him personally. One of the companions asked where she was going. Lise replied directly that she was going to see the president of the association because she had a request. Meanwhile, Okan continued to face his opponents. It didn't matter who stepped onto the stage, the result was always the same. No one could last even 3 moves. What didn't need avoiding were any questions. They only wondered what kind of trouble the Hunter Academy was teaching. But then, after defeating several opponents, a worthy figure appeared before him. When she entered the scene, memories flooded the audience. It was candidate Ansanga, and everyone was eager to see if she could stop the unstoppable flow of that mysterious prodigy. Okan observed her casually, but soon felt a spark of interest. She had a concentration of mana, denser than he had ever seen. Ansanga began, "Little boy, you made it this far just by luck. This ends here and now." On the ground, inside, those words were straight from a textbook. It was a face from the Hunter's Academy. In the next second, calmly, Ansanga slowly drew her sword, and a golden light shone in her eyes. "You may not have special skills, but that doesn't mean I'll go easy on you." Those words made the dog slightly agitated. "What do you mean, no special skills?" He knew that if he used it, he could easily break her. Ansanga took a deep breath and adopted a combat stance. Mana began to flow around her hand. Golden lightning enveloped the blade, making the weapon vibrate slightly. The dog, seeing all this, felt the adrenaline rush, but in the next instant, Ansanga lunged forward. A green light exploded around her. Still, her charged and prepared cut couldn't catch him. The dog simply leapt and dodged. Ansanga was stunned. He dodged? What the heck, brother? Where did the guy go? He avoided her lightning cut just by jumping. Her technique involved electrifying both the sheath and the blade, creating magnetism and overlaying that force when drawing. It was like turning the attack into a kind of strike, like a ray gun. Moments later, the dog landed firmly and said, "So far, your technique is the best I've seen, but you're missing the most important part. You're too obsessed with speed, girl." Ansanga's mistake was clear. By creating a magnetic path, a space to accelerate more, the movement in the attack trajectory became evident. No matter how fast the opponent was, with such a clear path, he wouldn't be able to face it head-on. Frustration overwhelmed Ansanga. She convinced herself that the dog had just been lucky. She raised the sword and launched an even fiercer attack. "Even without this technique, I can defeat a guy like you," she said. "Ha-ha!" But reality disappointed her again. Her strikes were dodged with total ease. "You're an idiot." Okan shot coldly. If I could dodge her quick attack, what makes you think something as simple could reach me? You bastard! Those words ignited Ansanga's fury, causing her to completely lose her composure. Induced by rage, she unleashed her most destructive attack. Oke noticed this in the blink of an eye. She was forcing mana beyond her limits. If she continued, her body would collapse before her opponent. Then, in the blink of an eye, Oke appeared right in front of her. His effort was remarkable. He said, "But this fight ends here." Before acting, he casually remarked, "If it starts to hurt, raise your left hand." And in the next moment, a blow resonated as it struck hard against Ansanga's abdomen. Even without using all his strength, the hit made her vomit violently. Oke then showed no mercy and unleashed a flurry of punches, smashing her face. Finally, a powerful punch connected squarely with her face. After that blow, Ansanga's consciousness began to slip away. With a thud, the much-anticipated prodigy fell to the ground, not as a winner, but as a defeated one. The spectacle left the audience in shock. Oko had annihilated Ansanga, one of the best at the academy. With Oko appearing so ordinary, many chose to think that Ansanga only had looks, believing she relied too much on mana and neglected her physical training. At that moment, Okyo noticed a movement behind him and imagined she would attempt to continue the fight. But when he turned around, he saw Ansanga, slowly raising her left hand. Her body, completely shattered, could barely remain standing. Oke found that strangely funny. He had casually mentioned raising the left hand if it hurt, and she actually did. Very typical of an academy student. Meanwhile, a team member rushed towards the referee, whispering in his ear. The referee's expression grew more serious. Moments later, he announced that the fight schedule had been adjusted. The winner, Oko, could take a brief pause. This left Okai perplexed. Had the fight not already ended? Why did he have to prepare again? Then the next words of the referee brought the answer. Next, the winner, Okan, will participate in a special match against an active hunter. This match was personally approved by the president of the association, and all preparations are complete. All eyes turned to the enormous screen when the name appeared. The crowd erupted in applause. Okan squinted at the public's reaction. He seemed like a veteran with a lot of experience. A special match, he thought, stepping forward to test his strength. It wasn't the first time he had seen a situation like this, not even in another world. The sharp sound of metal scraping the ground as the steel dragged through the sand. Her name is Rukan, isn't it? She introduced herself as Desire, and even said, "I want to see if you're still hiding other abilities, sweetheart." Her gaze was calm, but carried an oppressive air. "This setting is too small for you. I would like to have a match with you. If you think it's, too much, you can refuse. I would understand very well." That was quite sudden. When Okan changed his attitude, he managed a bitter smile. She was the hunter who was in the top 10 that the kid had talked about. More importantly, the stance and pressure she exuded were not fake. She was a true professional hunter who had survived numerous battles. Even wielding a spear, facing her directly with Okan's body could be complicated. Yet, for some reason, that smirk appeared on his lips. "You know, right? It's like Goku style, you get it? The stronger, the better. If you want to test my strength, then come on." The referee beside him was slightly paralyzed. "Aren't you going to rest first?" He noticed that fighting spirit in Okan's eyes and smiled slightly. "Look, it seems like you're the same type as me, sweetheart." Okan returned the smile with excitement shining in his eyes. "Then let me see if the strongest in this world is worthy of my respect." When the moment came, both moved, and a fierce clash erupted. The shock left the audience stunned. Even the habit was sweating cold, not knowing how to narrate that. After blocking yet another attack from LC1, there were no signs of relaxation in Okan. He could clearly feel how powerful that woman was. An overwhelming force concentrated in a female body, capable of rivaling any male hunter without any trouble. In the next moment, to escape that relentless attack, Okan twisted his wrist, making the spear spin in his palm and deflecting the blow with force. He dedicated all his energy to that movement, forcing LC1 to step back, step by step. Still, LC1 remained serene. It was clear that this girl was still testing him, holding back her true power. Compared to the beginning of the fight, Okan's speed had decreased significantly. After so long fighting against an S-rank hunter, fatigue began to show on his face. It wasn't that LC1 left any openings, it was that his current body couldn't keep up with the combat instincts forged in life-or-death battles. To her credit, LC1 was genuinely excited. It had been a while since she had encountered someone like him. Although he wasn't on the same level, Okan definitely deserved the title of strong. She would have enjoyed continuing the fight, but she noticed that the kid was reaching his limits. Stepping forward, she said with a glimmer of approval, "You did remarkably well, kid. I thought you would last about 5 minutes. I didn't expect you to hold out for a full 30. Before her words could settle, she launched into the attack. "Since you're already tired, I'll make it easy for you. It's time for you to withdraw and rest." Suddenly, Okan firmly gripped the spear. There was no mana accumulated in his body, and the mana around him was also scarce. Okan let out a slow sigh, trying to calm his mind. It was a technique he didn't want to use, but that situation left no room for choice. He quickly leaned back, anticipating LC1's attack. His eyes were glued to her every movement. The moment any opening appeared, he would unleash the paradox flame. As the flame took shape, LC1's eyes widened in surprise. But instead of dodging, she attacked head-on. Her sword came down, interrupting the attack with a firm strike. Realizing she had not hurt the dog, she stepped back, increasing the distance between them. A satisfied smile bloomed on the Lyceum's face. That last blow should have been enough to catch him off guard, yet he was still able to dodge. He pointed to the dark aura surrounding him. "What is that black energy exactly? You used it to try to attack me, didn't you?" My sword sliced through, effortlessly. Calmly, the dog replied, "That is the flame of the paradox, my last resort. In that other world, it was my most used ability, my true trump card. This black flame does not compare to ordinary fire. The only reason my clothes remain in good condition is that it cannot burn physical materials. Instead, each flame consumes abstract concepts that I choose as fuel. At my current level, I cannot incinerate high-density concepts like identity, memory, or reason." In the blink of an eye, the dog lunged forward. The spears whirled fiercely in his hands, accompanied by a sharp roar. At that moment, the only thing he could burn was his own fatigue. This truly caught the Lyceum off guard. His speed increased considerably. "Were you satisfied during this fight? Is that it, kid?" The dog completely ignored her words, and now seemed like a blur, almost as if he had teleported, appearing right in front of her. The spear struck with a single movement. In LC's eyes, disbelief took over. "You recovered too quickly. How is that possible?" No sooner had he finished speaking than LC vanished into the sand with a whisper. In the next instant, he reappeared in front of the dog at an absurd speed. The weapons collided simultaneously, creating an explosion of metallic sounds. As the combat stretched on, Lyceum began to notice something strange. The density of mana in the air fluctuated constantly, yet the sand formations remained intact. There was only one explanation for all of this. It was the result of Okan's paradoxical flame, just as ordinary fire releases energy from burning materials. The paradox flame releases mana by consuming abstract concepts. Okan is using mana to activate the paradox flame, which in turn burned his fatigue to generate even more mana. A self-sustaining cycle. The fatigue was consumed, converted into mana, and that mana reignited the flame repeatedly. In other words, the can specialized in endurance battles. The longer the fight dragged on, the more the opponent's state deteriorated, while he maintained a constant balance of semi-exhaustion. Then, in a sudden movement, LC appeared face to face with the can and struck with his sword. A metallic clang echoed. The attack shattered the surface of the arena, yet still failed to hit him. "Do you think this will end like this?" The Bokan saw me through the dispersing dust, looking like someone clinging desperately to another's leg, refusing to let go. He let out a soft laugh. "So, I planned all this wear and tear from the beginning, and now you tell me to give up? I can keep right here, you know?" He didn't shy away. "Tell me then, does someone as bold as I deserve your approval?" Fatigue finally reflected in Lisi's eyes. He had deliberately kept his strength in check to fight Okan on equal terms. Had he gone serious from the start, that fight could have ended in a single blow. He spoke in a calm voice. "I doubt anyone appreciates those who don't know when to stop. When you burn a tree, what remains is ash. Ashes that have already burned cannot catch fire again. The paradox flame leaves residues. When everything is reduced to ashes, that is the moment when the flame disappears and your life comes to an end." Lisi looked at the timer on his wrist. 4 hours and 17 minutes had passed. At this point, Roken was completely collapsed on the ground. She looked down at him and said, "You held on for a long time. Do you still want to continue?" Roken surrendered without hesitation. "Please let me go. If this goes on, I will really die." With his withdrawal, Lisi was officially declared the winner of the combat. LC1 reached into her coat and pulled out a lollipop. As soon as LC1 appeared, the crowd surrounding her was stunned, frozen in place. She, completely at ease, threw a lollipop towards the dog. Along with the candy, a card flew through the air with a message. "This is your reward for the effort." And she added, "Don't forget my card. Call me, okay? Look at that. Will a couple come out?" The dog looked at the card. It read, "Lee's a main hunter B, partner of Ianua." In a low voice, she continued, "We'll discuss the details later, but just call me as soon as you rest." 2.5 hours later, Okan tasted the lollipop and literally crushed it between his teeth. He was astonished by the smart device he held in his hands. In his time, identity was just a piece of paper and a pen, but now a cell phone did everything. It was like a magical communication system, just like it was in the other world he lived in. Then, out of nowhere, a big guy appeared in front of him. "You're Halcon, right?" He seemed much more imposing in person than on camera. After introducing himself, the man handed him a card, Thai Company Limited, Yonghain. He got straight to the point, urging Okan to assemble the team. He was convinced that Okan would shine under his leadership. Okan watched the guy closely. To be honest, just then, the image of Lek-1 popped into his mind, the way she insisted he call her after he rested. He kept Yong's card and said, "I need some time to think before deciding." Instead of being upset, Yang Jin laughed and said, "Did you think I'd rush you? Take all the time you need." Okan thought that Yojin was just a cool guy. But then, at some point, his hand rested on Okan's shoulder. Okan maintained a steady gaze, not looking away, and Ojin just reinforced that Okan should think carefully and that he trusted his intelligence. Then he said goodbye, leaving Okan deep in thought. What really surprised Okan was Yongjin's objectivity. This convinced him that he wouldn't even consider joining the guild. 10 minutes later, Okan grabbed his cell phone and called Lesom, asking where he could find her. She quickly sent him an address, a room on the second floor of the Hunters Association. When Okan arrived, he spotted a shop called The Cabin, just as he had been told. The team at the entrance welcomed Okan with enthusiasm. It seemed that this guy was almost a celebrity. "Now, welcome to the cabin. The person inside has been waiting for you." Hearing footsteps, Lisi turned around, waving for Okan to come closer. She was surprised to see him so soon and quickly asked if anything had happened. Okan summarized the situation, telling her that someone had tried to recruit him for a guild, a huge guy to be exact. Lisi listened calmly. It must have been Engi, one from the guild. When he takes an interest in someone, the others usually back off. Okan let out a low chuckle. "So your guild is cautious too? If that's the case, I'm kind of disappointed, to be honest." But to his surprise, Lisi didn't try to recruit him. On the contrary, she asked if he was just working without being part of any guild, meaning being an independent hunter. This caught Okan off guard. His mind was racing. Lisi saw that the missions did not require mandatory membership and continued. Elgin probably just wanted to offer an entry-level position. Okan slammed his hand on the table, outraged. Entry-level position? Then what would a partner position be? Lisi began to explain. Hunters affiliated with a guild were categorized into 3 levels: beginner, senior, and partner. Beginners and partners formed teams, led by a partner, and had an employee role. Partner hunters were the ones who owned part of the guild. Instead of a fixed salary, they received a percentage of the profits. It was basically a law firm, you know? Lisi said that at the beginning, guilds were founded following this structure. Okan soon realized why he didn't need to join a guild and climb the ranks. He just had to build a solid reputation and results that no one could ignore. This idea made him happy. He felt there were no barriers in talking to Okan. What struck Okan was the strange habit of being surrounded by sweets. Since he sat down, there had been 2 candies the girl gave him, but come on, there was a mess left over. Okan had nowhere to run, no contacts or resources up his sleeve. How was he supposed to land some decent jobs like that? Oh man, this was getting complicated, you know? Dude, in that calm way of his, he seemed to minimize the situation. "Relax, man, it's nothing." She gave a little smile and said she would help without charging a dime. But that attitude was concerning, with a bit of suspicion, because after all, who does something like that without a reason? He went straight to the point. "Why? Would you be doing all this for me?" Then the girl pulled out a folder of documents and said, "Listen, in the future, when you shine and the guilds are at your door, I want you to remember me. I was one who lent a hand." And it seemed like she just wanted a little favor when the time came. So, calmly, she pushed the folder towards Okan and said, "Want to take a look? Whether you accept it or not, the decision is entirely yours." Okan opened the folder and started deciphering the information. The job was in the city of Isham, aimed at a place called Island Item. Back there, 2 years prior, there had been an attempt to deactivate a corrosion rift. But the mission was a fiasco, leaving the area totally corrupted. Soon, Okan thought the job was to deal with the rift directly, but in reality, the mission was to keep an eye on the island. Hydrogen just needed to mark the new rifts and eliminate them if they popped up. Damn. It turned out the job had an upfront payment of 5 million, plus 15 million if he did well on that mission. You got that? He let the papers fall on the table and reflected, considering how risky it was. The payment seemed a bit trivial, don't you think? But Lacey seemed to be on cloud 9, enjoying the idea. "If you think it's unfair, you better get stronger and more famous, my partner. When you're really famous, the money will come to you easily too. You believe that, right?" At that moment, the tension in the air was palpable. Le wanted to know if Okan would accept the mission, yes or no. Okan took his time with a smile on his face and said, if that's how it is, I accept. I like to push myself to the limit, man. And then the scene cuts to half an hour later. Two cars were speeding down the road, right in the hustle. At the same time, I was having a conversation on the phone with a mysterious guy who seemed to know his stuff. He gave a brief introduction. He was a civilian who had gone through a tournament where they only evaluated weapons fighting. The guy on the other side was straight to the point. Not bad, but he let out a chuckle, standing by the door. You know what I mean? You're crazy. This assessment is wrong in every way. I sweated it out, fighting with him for over 4 hours. The voice on the phone was frozen. You're kidding, right? And he, casually, it wasn't just because I held his power. And the girl, who was a hunter with over a decade of fighting experience, thought to herself, I should have taken him down, but instead it turned into a huge mess. She paused and thought, even if I lived a bunch more times, I might never encounter a monster like Can again. After a while, the man replied, look, this is all cool, but this mission requires hunters with experience. Your talents are amazing, but will he be able to hold his own with the older crowd? She affirmed that she had someone experienced to support Hokan on this mission and asked another question. What if this kid reaches your level someday? The guy on the phone laughed coldly. That must be a hassle, but you're going to have to accept it. The reply came firm. If Can reaches my level, not even the boss will be able to stop him. Then the scene rewound a month. Can was there just doing his thing, ordering a package online, and the delivery guy was all pissed off. Damn, what a weight is this? After leaving the big package at the door, he left without looking back. When the maid took over the hallway, Can opened the door and grabbed the damn package. Inside was a long black case, the weapon he had purchased online. With a click, he quickly unfastened the latch. When the vision revealed what was inside, he was left speechless. The design was surreal. The spear seemed to be tailor-made for him. It would be good for use in combat, but that wasn't all. There was also a spiritual portion, one of the most essential items for hunters when things got tight. That little vial had a tangle of mana, super focused and a lifesaver in tight moments. Normally, handling mana was like drinking water. Hunters absorbed it from the environment and stored it for the right moment. With this potion, using it in that way was much faster and also much more efficient. At that moment, Oko had a unique way of using mana. He skipped the entire storing step and used it right away. This method raised the stakes significantly, depending on mana from the environment. The limits were almost non-existent. Moreover, over time, the mana channels in his body only strengthened, allowing him to handle increasingly larger amounts. However, over time, there was a disadvantage. As long as the mana channels did not mature, he would only be able to control a limited amount. In the hustle, mana was about releasing bursts of power in short windows. It wasn't easy. Like, he had to store a bit of mana before going into the safety of the game. The guy could even drink the whole vial at once. But after a month of training this way, he thought he would reach the ideal level to keep up. A month later, the scene changed to Idong Island, over in Incheon. The meeting point was a frenzy, with the ominous line of hunters preparing for the operation. Can, relaxed, received the instructions and was assigned to Squad 8. There he stood under a sign with the number 8, not saying a word, while the crowd around him was buzzing. This payment is going to be awesome, huh? One of the hunters commented, just waiting for when we would get moving. While Mokan was meditating quietly, someone shouted his name. Turning around, he recognized the huntress Hansanga. She had cut her hair, probably realizing that long hair was a weakness in combat. Without much fuss, she came over to team up with him for the mission. Roken was curious and asked, "Do you think I'm strong? What do you intend to learn from my fighting style?" Hansanga smiled and said she wanted to see how he handled himself and pick up some tips. Oken just thought, look at that, another load on me. It's going to be hard to shake this off, but if you can keep up with my pace, let's do this, he concluded, showing his fighting spirit. At that moment, a team member interrupted their exchange, since the entire Squad 8 was present. Let's start the mission briefing. As we have beginners here, I will explain some basic concepts. To the more experienced hunters, we appreciate your understanding. Look, the corrosion fissures are categorized into levels 1 and 2, 3, and there are also those that have no classification. The closer you get to level 1, the bigger the trouble. The first fissure that appeared in a specific location is called the Alpha Fissure. Currently, the Alpha Fissure on Iron Island is in a small church in the northern area of Insuri. It has no classification because the situation there is somewhat unpredictable, you know? So, the message is, stay sharp, and stay away. The mission for the group is to patrol the eastern part of Iden Island, identify new corruption fissures, and take them out if they appear. Suddenly, someone from the team muttered, "Are they sending rookies to clean up fissures?" That's right. Everyone ignored that complaint and got ready for the operations area. When they arrived, Okan heard alerts about how dire the situation was. Even from a distance, they could feel that the energy there was chilling, as if their blood froze, you know? And to Kan, all of that sounded like a bit of an exaggeration, you know? Hansanga gave him a tap with the back of his sword on his thigh, signaling him to move on. That's when the real operation began. Then, a member from the island shouted, "The conditions of the island are being monitored in real time in the control room. If you need help, let us know immediately. Good luck, everyone." The goal was to inspect 2 areas within a week. In the midst of the conversation, Kan threw out an idea. The map on his phone suggested setting up base at the Vatican Temple and organizing from there. The reaction was hostile. "And who are you, man? I've never seen you. You're a rookie, right? You know? Temple? What's that?" Okan ignored that outburst and said, "It's cool. Look, from the Basal Temple. We can monitor the engineering area and the buildings, which are still intact. We can use them as shelter. It's just basic field logic. And you guys didn't think of that?" What Khan didn't expect was that his suggestion would ignite the crowd. There are plenty of better places nearby, and if we get surrounded after climbing the mountain, Khan let out a cold chuckle. "We're not fighting an army of millions. How are they going to surround us up there?" Just that comment made the crowd even more furious. "We're not going to take orders from a rookie hunter like you." Khan realized there have always been some guys who ignore the most basic logic, so he decided that it would be best to split up. They were going to follow their plan, and he would follow his. Khan thought only Ansanga would accompany him, but to his surprise, another guy joined the team. He looked at the guy walking beside him and noticed that his mana level was better than Ansanga's. If he wasn't mistaken, the guy's name was Kim Minhai. Curious about why Kim Minhai joined, Khan asked. His wife made Khan let out a light laugh, and Minhai mentioned that they were newcomers and that he was worried that the 2 inexperienced ones alone might get into trouble. So, he decided to join the 2 to ensure the mission wouldn't go south. And that's how it started. At least one of the guys in the group is trustworthy, right? But suddenly, Khan's vibe turned tense, as if he sensed trouble approaching. Within seconds, he turned in that direction, leaving the other 2 dumbfounded in surprise. Khan raised his hand, asking them to stop, and made a hush gesture like, "Shut up." In a low voice, he decided to take a peek at what was happening on the other side, while Minhai, being all cautious, looked to see what there was. And what he saw nearly took his breath away. A bunch of monsters running wildly among the trees in the forest. It was an absurdly large number, around 50 creatures. "We have to go around this and avoid a direct fight." Khan was now trying to reassure the kid. "Relax, there's no need to panic." But what was Minhai's unique skill? He even hesitated to reveal it. Kan left with an intense expression, as if he was really considering facing the monsters head-on. That hesitation added a serious weight to the atmosphere, leaving a question hanging in the air. Again, he spoke firmly. "What is your unique ability, exactly?" Kan finally figured out that Kim Jae's power was fire, and the technique that really rocked was the famous fireball. Man, I will never get over that name. Kim Jae is going to mess you up with that name, dude. So cool, right? Wait for my signal, and then go in with an attack that, already is stuck. He wasn't expecting me, Kan, to call for an attack with such confidence. For a moment, he was at a loss for what to do. Then, before Kim Jae could think it through, Ansanga gave his command. "Kim Jae is going to attack. What should I do?" In that move, it was 3 against 50. That's right, my brother. Especially since it was the crew's first mission, better gather more people before the situation gets even tenser. Kanba raised his head suspiciously. "There's no time. The others would take an eternity to get here." That situation was incredibly tense. Okan's team had gone straight from the Basal Temple, while the others were still out there, clearing the backs looking for threats. Moreover, using the radio might be a bad plan. He wasn't sure if anyone could make it in time. If the monsters descended upon them, it could get nasty for the other teams. When Kim Jae calmed down, he began to understand Okan's perspective, which made perfect sense. Even with the other hunters nearby, there was no guarantee they would arrive, especially after the previous mess. This meant that only the 3 of them had to face the monsters alone in such an unfavorable scenario. The surprise attack seemed like the only move, and Kim Jae's fireball was crucial. Maybe if he could lend a hand too, right? Rawan didn't waste time and said bluntly, "Kim Jae attacks the center with the fireball. I'll cover the sides and prevent them from escaping." The plan was so spot on that it felt like Kan had already seen the future. Kim Jae and Ansanga exchanged glances and wondered what kind of warrior that was. They waited for the right moment. Soon, a bunch of monsters gathered. That was the cue Mijar needed. He cast the fireball without a second thought, and in a second, before the monsters could protect themselves, an explosion of flames engulfed the area. The power of the spell was devastating, turning many monsters to ashes in a split second. Still, Kim Jair needed time to prepare the other spell, and during that time, Okan needed to hold the line, blocking every attack that came. Kim Jae clasped his hands in prayer, praying and concentrating his mana. Okan quickly dashed forward. His speed was surreal, almost impossible to follow. The intent to kill shone in his eyes, and his only mission now was to hold the monsters back and buy time for Kim Jair to prepare his next move. In an explosive motion, Okan took down several monsters from the rift. He knew every second counted. His task was to buy time for the team to organize and attack with everything they had. But then, AI creature jumped directly at him. Okan ignored the charge, pulled out the spear, and made an arc, taking down more monsters that came within his range. The fireball couldn't be shortened in any way, but to hold the line alone, he needed Ansanga to join the fray. "Your turn, buddy!" Okan shouted. In the next instant, a metallic clang echoed beside him, and with a precise cut, Ansanga obliterated 3 goblins. He took a deep breath and said, "Your part is done. Now everything depended on who would piss first." His murmur faded, and a wave of searing energy was about to explode. Kim Jae's fireball was about to be launched. Okan made a quick sign. "Wait, let loose the attack as soon as I engage. Got it? If he got caught in the middle of the play, it would be bad news." As Okan cleared the area, Kim Jae released the fireball. The flaming sphere shot out like a rocket straight at the monsters. A devastating explosion shook the ground where Okan had been moments before. He had already jumped before the impact. Right after, Okan held the spear tightly. After the chaos of the explosion, 2 monsters still tried to escape, but Kan was not about to let them get away. Soon after, the smoke from the forest began to dissipate, and Kan firmly planted his spear in the ground. The ambush had been a resounding victory, with all the monsters eliminated, but the fight took its toll on the 3 warriors. Kan was about to praise his team, when suddenly, something unusual surprised him from behind. Turning around, Kan felt a twinge of unease upon seeing Kim Jair aiming a gun directly at his head. His expression was sinister, a mix of tension and complete focus. Then, Kim Jair broke into a smile and said, "I'm going to piss on you. Just kidding, just kidding. Would you mind giving a good look?" It seemed he was blocking the target. Ken was in shock. At first, he thought the guy was going to shoot him in the face, but in an instant, Kim Jair pulled the trigger twice, and the shots fired hit a monster that dropped lifeless right there. They were placing microchips in the bodies of the creatures to ensure everything went through the proper process. Once the mission was complete and the area secured, the hired hands for the collection would arrive. These specialists were sinister, able to extract useful materials directly from the bodies. After placing the chips, they would take care of the bodies, collecting anything that might be worth something. Well, those items would be highly appraised, sold, and everyone would share the profits. The recoverers would keep their commission, and the rest would go to the families of the hunters who had fallen in this. Kan was curious and asked if they could really trust these recoverers, to which Kim Jair assured him that trust was possible, as long as they chose a root recoverer and signed a contract beforehand. As the conversation rolled on, a monster was still hiding among the trees, watching Kan attentively. In the blink of an eye, it launched a surprise attack, sending shards of stone into the air. Kan wasted no time and pulled Kim Jair, dragging him away from the impact area. Had he not acted quickly, the two would have been seriously hurt. Upon reaching a safe place, Kan shoved Kim Jair to one side and faced the creature. His heart raced with frustration. They had just taken down a pack of monsters, and now another one appeared. The monster let out a chilling laugh, revealing a row of grotesque fangs. Okan's expression hardened. That creature was clearly the leader of the other monsters. With a deafening roar, its howl echoed throughout the forest. Nobody knew if it was calling for reinforcements or not. Okan murmured some quiet words, wondering if he would fight because he had not joined the others. Facing that creature alone was suicide. All right, the bat leader laughed in a shrill and insane manner. Okan felt the adrenaline surge from that figure. Clearly, he was on a different level than the smaller monsters. So, with that adrenaline rising, Okan shouted for his companions to stay back, ordering them not to interfere unless they wanted trouble. The creature's strength was overwhelming. If the monster got close to them, no one would escape. The two were frozen, in place. Normally, a monster of that kind would require all 3 of them to fight together. Okan then exclaimed, "I'll say it just once. Withdraw now." Don't make me say it again unless you want to go home with your head severed. His warning sent a chill down everyone's spine. It was a terrifying way to speak. Okan swung his spear and insisted once more that they leave immediately. Fighting alone allowed him to unleash all his strength without fear of harming his friends. "Come on then!" the bat leader roared. In a matter of seconds, Okan collided directly with the bat leader. Ansanga moved quickly to help, but who was he about to hold back? "Not now. You just get in the way." And despite everything, it seemed Okan was not losing the fight. None of the bat's attacks even grazed his clothes. Ansanga noticed something incredible. Okan's speed and perception were absurd. If he had been fighting like that in his place, he doubted he could dodge those attacks. In a swift motion, Okan evaded another strike from the leader. While sliding, he attacked with the spear that burned with black flames. The movements of the bat leader were becoming slower and slower. Although the fight seemed fierce, the truth was that Kan was toying with that creature. Ansanga was completely paralyzed, staring blankly. Kan was a novice hunter, but he appeared more like a veteran forged in endless battles. The leader then launched another attack aimed at him. Kan chuckled softly. "Perfect! Let's see if you're worth my effort." Then he quickly stepped back, gaining distance, and threw his spear straight up. Ansanga was left open-mouthed and dropped her weapon. At that moment, "Damn, are you crazy? What is he thinking?" As the spear fell, the monster lunged at Okan. "What madness is this, my brother?" In a fraction of a second, the beast moved even closer. Ken remained calm, eye to eye with that creature. Then, with a swift and precise strike, the monster's head fell before him. No one understood what had happened. Kan had thrown his spear moments before, and in its descent, it pierced the creature's neck. The creature, even with its exposed wound, still writhed, showing its damned resilience. But our dear Okan wasn't going to give that old monster a chance to recover. In the blink of an eye, he yanked the spear out and forcefully drove it repeatedly into the creature's head, putting an end to that grotesque threat once and for all. Kim Jae, just watching, was bewildered. It seems like just moments ago, Kan was getting beaten, and now, bam, the thing is on the ground. Kan looked at Kim Jae and fired back, "Do you think it's normal for these creatures to appear here?" Kim Jae was also unsure. That monster wasn't even a proper corruption unit, and if this place really was a corruption zone, it should at least be level 3. Corruption units were divided into 4 levels, and according to the report, the Alpha Corruption Rift on Dong Island didn't even have a classification. This only led to one conclusion: the situation was more sinister than they thought. And the fracture could have already risen to level 3. It was urgent to report this. Ansanga hesitated, but Kan asked her not to freak out and to think calmly. If it weren't level 3, all of this wouldn't make sense. The expression of Burn Jair turned dark. The difference between no classification and level 3 was absurd. If it were true, few hunters would come out alive. The island was riskier than they had imagined, and this needed to be treated as a priority. Ansanga suggested that they first go rescue the lost hunters. With Okan's strength, even a level 3 place could be circumvented. Okan cut the idea short. There was no way to find and save all the hunters on the island. He also had his limits. It was more important to identify and eliminate new corruption fractures. Casualties were inevitable. Then, Ansanga asked a troubling question. "If you were in danger, how would you feel?" Okan had a heavy look. "You're trying to save them with the mindset of someone who's already gone," he replied. It wasn't a matter of devaluing what they felt. It was about results. He made it clear that if anyone wanted to go save, he wouldn't stop them, but he asked not to impose that choice. In this world, there are deaths that cannot be avoided. You have to learn to accept it, Kan said coldly. If trying to save the hunters worsens the corruption fracture and causes more deaths, then that would indeed be a sin. In times of desperation, hesitating was the worst thing you could do. If you continue with this sentimental mentality, missions won't last long in this world. When night fell, the group found shelter and entered an abandoned house. The place was completely empty, with no signs of corrupted creatures having stepped there. Ninja and Ansanga checked everything, and nothing appeared wrong, only the dim lights. Thanks to those lights, they had a sense of where the other hunters were, but from Okan's perspective, it was a risk. If a smaller beast showed up, the situation was still okay, but if another bat boss appeared, it would go badly. Okan took out his cell phone and called the other hunters. Here is Squad 8 with the latest encounters. The Alpha Rift has escalated to level 3. Turning on lights indiscriminately can attract the wrong thing. It's crucial to avoid doing this. Once the core of a corruption rift is destroyed, all monsters held by it vanish. Without this power source, the corrupted area would collapse. After some deliberation, Okan found the mission to be much simpler than he had thought. When the time came, he would take care of the corruption rift. that night, he settled in for good. The Unsanga had already flipped, and Mijai had also met its end. Okan set up an alarm device beside them, just to be safe. The team would alert him if any monster approached, freeing Okan from worry. As soon as he stepped out, Okan moved swiftly among the trees. He had already discovered where the Alpha Rift was located. The operation during the night was supposed to go smoothly. Then suddenly, Okan felt something was wrong. He noticed movement ahead. A familiar and disturbing laugh echoed through the trees. Okan's expression turned grave. He knew that everything had spiraled out of control. As he suspected, something was amiss. Without wasting any time, he ignited the flames, and, turning to face the threat, he saw that it was not the monster he expected. The creature revealing itself before him was indescribable, a colossal body, larger than any bat leader. Meanwhile, an emergency erupted at the Hunters Association headquarters. The signals of several members of Squad 5 had simply vanished, suggesting they had been eliminated. The administration was in shock, and to make matters worse, reports of casualties from other squads began to pile up. Damn, what is happening in this area? The officer was asking, rushing to the communications center, urgently requesting reinforcements and issuing an urgent distress alert for the hunters in the region. Moments later, another notification arrived. Someone was rapidly approaching the core of the Alpha Corruption Rift. The mission leader didn't hesitate and quickly ordered to hire that hunter, warning that what he was about to face was a huge danger. When the identification data arrived, the crowd was frozen. The hunter was Okan from Squad 8. This was shaping up to be the first person to have the chance to find the core of the Corruption Rift. The order was clear. Connect swiftly with Okan's terminal to check on him. Never before had something like this happened, with a corruption core leveling up in the middle of an operation. Okan was the first to notice the significant anomaly and rushed towards the core. It was crucial to keep an eye on him. The connection was quick. On the screen, the scene was surreal. Okan was not fighting but desperately running from a monster. The creature was far more sinister than he had thought, and its speed execution was terrifying. Then, his voice echoed through the Hunter Association channel. "That monster behind me is really powerful. Staying alive this long is pure luck." As he ran fast, Okan wondered, wasn't anyone assigned to investigate this place? Why hasn't any message come through? When I get back, I'll shove the Corruption Rift down all your throats. The outburst of words caused nervous glances at headquarters. In the end, they decided to silence his terminal. Just confirming that he was still alive was enough. He was pushing his limits in his current state. Taking down that monster with brute force was impossible. The only way out was to wear it down gradually and then deliver a precise strike with the spear. But the creature that was about to appear in his path defied any of his expectations, showed no signs of fatigue. During a fight against the Bat Leader, Okan had drained a fair amount of mana from the environment of Dragon Isle, significantly weakening that enemy. This meant he couldn't leave the island now. He needed to find a place to replenish his mana, and fast. At that moment, his eyes sparkled. He had found exactly what he was looking for. In front of him, a black hole opened in the ground like an eternal abyss, and without thinking twice, Okan jumped in. As he fell, he turned and challenged the creature that was pursuing him, beckoning it to come quickly. He had something in mind. At the same time, the signal disappeared from the screens of the Hunters series. The reason was quite simple. He had entered the Alpha Corruption Rift. When the news arrived, the leader's face went pale. This was bad, very bad. As he entered the core, the pipe realized that the place was much cleaner than he had imagined. It wasn't only remnants of corruption. He frowned. According to previous data, even level 5 and 3 corruption cores didn't grow this fast. Moments later, the pipe crossed the boundary of the Corruption Rift. What awaited ahead was the real threat, the true heavyweight. It wasn't someone focused on fighting, but if something kept provoking, his patience had limits. Slowly, the pipe tightened his grip around his weapon. One of the biggest flaws of the Paradox of Flame was its uncontrolled spread. It would catch any living being except itself, including allies. This was what made the flame so sinister and, at the same time, fundamentally dangerous. Once it exceeded the level he could control, the only option was to stop using it. This limitation was inevitable. Then, at that moment, a monster appeared in front of him. The pipe launched his spear forward without hesitation. The creature let out a scream and froze completely still. The pipe chuckled and said, "Mission accomplished." As he began to absorb the mana from the air around him, he felt the energy enter his body, compressing and storing everything. The mana circulated through every part of his body, startling and strengthening his channels. The pipe exhaled deeply, and with his breath, faint traces of demonic energy escaped. The result was impressive, far beyond what he expected. He then saw fissures starting to appear in the sky. The pipe raised his eyes. "Calm down, it looks like more are coming." Shortly after, several monsters similar to the previous ones began to emerge from the rift. Unfortunately for them, they arrived too late. The pipe's body had already completed its refinement process. This level of enemy no longer posed any threat. 3 monsters charged straight at him. With the extremely swift movement of the spear, the pipe gave a sarcastic smile. Indeed, no brains. Still believes that numbers count. In the next moment, the mana that exploded from his body shattered the monsters before they could reach him. Okan was several times stronger than before, yet in comparison to his power in the other world, it was still insufficient. Around 1 to 100, something like that, tied to his original strength. Then, a shadow appeared behind him, launching a stealth attack. A chill ran down his spine as that creature got so close. Almost instantaneously, as the attack began, the dog had already dodged. That creature had a humanoid body with a rat's head, its corruption core clearly on a completely different level. Instead of being frightened, Okan felt curiosity and wondered how many punches that thing could take to the face. In the next second, he charged forward with lightning, his spear spinning with overwhelming force. Okan thrust forward, and the rat creature, with all its audacity, blocked the attack, laughing at him. Too slow. Little did the creature know that the strike hadn't been at the peak of speed, but with enough force to shatter that weapon. The dog, with a firm gaze, calmly proclaimed, "Twin Moon Spear! First strike, Pierce." Then, in the blink of an eye, that creature was propelled backward by the impact of the mana, with no chance to respond. The rush arrived fully, hitting it before it could blink. The Twin Moon Spear was his trick. Each attack left a blue trail that replicated that first strike 4 more times. If Okan followed those marks, the move would be exceedingly simple, 4 guaranteed hits. But the true power of the attack was quite different. Those blue lines weren't just embellishments. They turned into kind of demonic boomerangs, nearly impossible to avoid twins. Faced with such insane and timed attacks, Okan saw no alternative for the rat creature. Its defeat was just a matter of time. Soon, the monster was caught again. As soon as he opened a gap, Okan knew it was time to end the fight once and for all. The time for the end had come, and in that second, he unleashed a torrent of attacks, each strike resonating 4 times. Pressing that creature to its limit, soon the beast's head was already half gone, yet even then it seemed to not believe that its end had come. Just as the can was preparing to continue, out of nowhere a box appeared in its hands. It opened it slowly, and upon seeing what was inside, it was completely paralyzed. Meanwhile, the Guild of Hunters had plunged into chaos. The cracks of corruption were expanding from the core of the island, and teams were disappearing one by one. Confronted with that scene, the leader didn't know what to do. The situation had exceeded all his expectations. Despair dominated his gaze. It was the end. Without a miracle, all that was left was to watch as the hunters were annihilated. There, a subordinate shouted, "Boss, you need to see this!" He continued urgently. A message just arrived from a hunter who is in the Alpha Core region. The leader, excited, switched the transmission to the main screen, and all the screens were showing the message from Alcan. The report confirmed that the signal from the core of corruption had disappeared and been completely eradicated, and that everything corrupt had vanished. Upon seeing this, the leader could hardly believe it. He was witnessing a true miracle. After sending the message, he let out a long sigh. Oh boy. He looked up at the sky and noted how many stars were still shining, and the air was much fresher than in the other world. Time rewound by 2 minutes. A wave of monsters surged from the fissure. At that moment, Ansanga was fighting alongside her companions. Her body was already full of wounds, and the sword was slipping from her hands. But at that instant, a fierce strength took over her. She braced her right arm, forcing her fingers to close into a fist. Her eyes fixed on the monsters in front of her, which were many, far more than she had faced all day, and worst of all, they hadn't found Oka until now. Right behind, Kim and Jay, Ansanga shouted, "Sir, is there still a chance for us to come out alive? I'm starting to lose it!" It was not just any fear. In front of them, a massive wave of creatures was gathering, ready to crush everything if they advanced together. Ansanga cast a quick glance at Kim. It was clear to Injair that he was on the edge. He didn't know if he could hold out much longer, but one thing was certain, he wouldn't fall there. Then, out of nowhere, a grotesque monster lunged straight at her. Her eyes narrowed instantly. She crouched slightly, and electric energy exploded in her hand. It was only then that she realized her legs were completely numb. She couldn't even remember when that had started, and worse still, 3 more monsters were already approaching. Mijai was in despair, but there was nothing he could do. One of the monsters was about to bite her neck. Unable to bear the pressure any longer, Mijai shut his eyes tightly. 5 seconds passed, but the scream he anticipated never came. When he opened his eyes again, what he saw left him speechless. All the monsters had vanished, reduced to floating ashes. The next day, the group met up with everyone at the Hunter's meeting point on East Bridge Island. When he saw the scene, his face grew grim. Many were injured. That corruption fisher had spiraled out of control while he was away. Upon noticing his arrival, the others looked at him with disbelief. Did you really take down a level 3 corruption fisher by yourself? But despite their analysis, it seemed impossible that this skinny guy could have accomplished such a feat alone. Ken approached closer and soon saw the members of Squad 8, and Mijai was genuinely stunned. He never imagined that Kan had dealt with a fisher all by himself. Ken let out a cold chuckle. Actually, it wasn't a conscious decision. It was his body acting before his mind. Everything he did was simply to protect his companions and hunters, and, thinking everything had turned out pretty well, he thought it was time to correctly play the role of the good guy and distance himself from the rogue image he had built before. Just at that moment, someone called him from behind, introducing himself as Parky and Akae, the manager of an operations affiliate in Korea. Ken gave a quick glance and replied in a frosty tone, "Oh, so you're the one who sent me here, Parky." One of the E's asked me to keep explaining that the mayor wanted to meet with him. Kan had already lost count of how many times they called him that way. It was as if being treated as subordinate was a chronic habit of this group. Thinking about it, Kan recalled something crucial. His contract didn't mention anything about a reward for eliminating a level 3 threat. So, being there, it seemed sensible to discuss something about money. As soon as Kan got out of the car, another guy walked up, Siu, introducing himself with all the initiative. He was a coordinating deputy responsible for partnership negotiations. As they walked, the guy explained that the mayor was eager for this meeting and had been shocked when the report from East Bridge Island arrived in the morning. That president had ordered this meeting to be arranged immediately, canceling everything just to be able to talk to Kan. No one expected a newcomer to single-handedly take down a level 3 origin. Damn, that hadn't happened since the veteran hunters of the first generation. Kan, surprised, couldn't imagine that someone from the past had done the same. Clearly, it must have been an extraordinary character too, right? No? Soon Kan arrived at the mayor's office. A robust man appeared and smiled. "Welcome, my name is Parkin. I'm the mayor of this city. I apologize for having summoned you on such a troubling day." Then, he invited Kan to his private cafe, hoping they could talk calmly. As the mayor of Incheon, East Bridge Island was a huge headache for him. Only by resolving this would his funding be released. Moreover, negotiations with businesses and unions were notoriously difficult. Kan took a sip of his coffee, thinking that at that moment, he really wanted to press the mayor for fair compensation. When the mayor learned that, on paper, Kan was still listed with the Avato, his expression filled with pride. This left Kan genuinely confused. He couldn't understand how everything had changed so rapidly. Basically, he discovered that Incheon was one of the strategic centers of the country, thanks to its top-notch airport infrastructure. A huge logistics network passed through the city daily. Moreover, the Free Economic Zone initiative transformed locations like Songdo and Shaognar into international hubs, attracting so many investors. It was quite complicated to choose, with such big money circulating around the metropolitan area of Incheon and goods passing through the airport. Everything suggested that Okan's path as a hunter was, kind of facilitated, almost as if it had been designed for success. At this point, Okan decided not to interrupt him, saying that he first needed to clarify something. If he was offering support of this magnitude, he certainly wanted something in return, like helping a mayor with declining popularity to secure re-election, right? No. The mayor choked and forced a smile. "You seem to be well informed. These markophones keep nothing hidden, huh, my young man?" Okan had probably done some research online, The mayor's term would end early next year, and given the current situation, people were saying that his chances of re-election were minimal. Sweat trickled down the mayor's forehead. "You are quite direct," he said. "Still, in this process, the approval of the city government of Incheon would not be necessary, contrary to what everyone said. As a rookie or academic, you needed the mayor's authorization to act freely, and if you played your cards right, the mayor could easily promote himself as the discoverer of a prodigious hunter trying to gain some fame." The mayor went on to explain that, thanks to the infrastructure of the mentioned city, he maintained great relations with various national and international companies. Leaning on a coffee pack on the table, he left an example. "This brand's sponsorship contract is about to expire. Your image could easily be placed on the packaging. This isn't the only opportunity in sight." At that moment, Okan interrupted, his calm tone becoming more direct, heavy. "I must seem like a cheap guy, huh?" Mayor's expression hardened immediately, clearly surprised. Okan continued saying, staring him down, "Are you telling me you could offer me all this?" But these things are things that I would eventually manage on my own. Don't you think that's unfair? The mayor made more proposals suggesting specific assignments for Okan, safe and well-paid missions, but Okan finds the idea boring. Dismissively, he waved his hand, getting ready to leave, asking the mayor to send his congratulations to the current model of the coffee brand, since, thanks to Okan's refusal, that model could remain at the top. Meanwhile, on a bridge in a certain place, two men remained hidden. One of them whispered, "Looks like the Bridge Island experiment was worth it." The guy kneeling did nothing but apologize, but he still mentioned that at least there was some good news. When he heard good news, the standing man showed interest. The good news was a clip preserved by the association, recorded during the ranking test of the hunters. There, Okan clearly appeared using that black flame. As he watched the footage, the guy smiled a little because that rookie was really useful. Someday that guy was making quite a name for himself. That attention was only growing. And are you enjoying the video? Then go ahead and hit the like button and comment continuation here, and we'll bring more continuation of this video. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for the next video.